Happy Saturday and welcome to our live tea practice here at Tea Curious. Yeah, it's a lovely Saturday. We just finished up a holiday week here in the United States, so we're all full and cooked out and happy. I hope that you guys in the U.S. have had a wonderful Thanksgiving week too. However you might celebrate it or not. Yeah, welcome to today's tea practice. As usual, show goes on Saturday. We're going to have a New Horizons themed tea practice today. So for those of you who have joined us over the last month or so, you'll know that we're currently in the middle or towards the end actually of our monthly tea challenge. This one is going to be New Horizons. It's basically trying to get us to explore different kinds of teas that we haven't really dipped into before. If you aren't used to digging into Korean tea like we are, we want you to dig into that kind of category. If you're not used to using a gaiwan, use a gaiwan instead of what you usually used to. Or if you're someone who always uses a gaiwan, I mean, I know I like gaiwans too, but you can maybe branch out and try something a little bit different that isn't in your comfort zone. So that's what the point of New Horizons is. And this whole month we've been kind of talking about ways to break past our comfort zones in tea. If those of you who missed that, we talked about how we can get beyond what we're used to doing in tea to learn a little bit more about how we can, just break beyond what we're used to. So if there's something in your mind that you're thinking, oh, I'm usually this kind of person. I'm always a Japanese tea drinker, or I always drink Chinese tea, or I always start my day with a black tea. I don't know why, it's just my habit. There's nothing wrong with that, of course, but I want you to know what that comfort zone is so that you can maybe break through it without feeling like it's scary. It's okay to not know everything. It's okay to kind of have a comfort zone. And then okay to also explore and get lost a little bit. So that's what we're doing today. We're doing that little theme. And we've picked for ourselves Korean tea as a focus of our New Horizons challenge this month. Because Stephen and I don't really know much about Korean teas. If you are watching this and you haven't watched a Korean green tea kind of lineup from last week, that should be on IGTV. And then also today we're going to be doing balhyocha. This is a Korean tea that's not a black tea, not an oolong tea. It's its own category. And we'd like to dig into this today as, again, a way to challenge our comfort zones and see what we can learn from something unusual for us, something that's a little bit out of our comfort zone. So yeah, let's say hi to our friends. I'm seeing Maddie B20, Bolin Nana, I'm seeing Steven, I'm seeing Brutus, I'm seeing Charmaine, Alverdata Rote, M Block, Huis, Marcel, and Kenneth. Welcome to tea practice today from Las Vegas. I hope you guys have some tea going on wherever you might be. Let us know where you're tuning in from and what kind of teas you're drinking on this lovely Saturday or maybe Sunday if you are on the other side of the little Earth universe. We are going to be drinking some balhyocha today. If you hopped onto the Morning Crane group buy this summer, you might find these little packets familiar. These are the packets of balhyocha that we got from Morning Crane. They are a non-profit group buy that happens every year, led by Arthur Park. He's a Scottish-American ceramicist. He's been working with Korean potters and Korean makers, Korean tea growers for literally longer than we've been alive, which is just crazy. There's so many people in tea who've been doing this for longer than we've been alive. So Arthur Park, does this really non-profit. They take a loss in it every single year because he's so passionate about people getting to know Korean tea as more than just in between Chinese and Japanese green tea. We've talked a lot about this before, especially last week when we did Korean green tea. Korean green tea, I think, is the most... I'd say people know the most about it, right? Do you guys know about Korean green tea? I think for me, I heard about Korean tea first in the context of it being a green tea. And that didn't help the whole situation of, yeah, it looks like it's kind of in between Chinese and Japanese tea. But as time went on, I learned from Arthur Park and my friend Eric Glass, who helped us on this group buy this month, or this year, that it's kind of unfair to call Korean tea in the middle of Chinese and Japanese tea. It's got its own tea culture. It's just as old, if not maybe a little bit older than Japanese tea production, which is not to say it's better, but it's just its own thing that it deserves its own kind of attention. So we talked Korean green teas last week. Let's get today to balhyocha. You can spell it balhyocha. So balhyocha. I know it's a little bit reversed for you guys, but balhyocha. So cha, as we know, is tea, and balhyo in Korean means oxidized. So it just means oxidized tea. So that's why it's easy to think it's supposed to be black tea or maybe oolong tea. But from talking to, Arthur Park and our, Korean tea studying friends, it's really its own category that we want to call it. So I'm seeing that Elver Dadarot is having a baozong today, and Marcel is having a Ceylon from Germany. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, I hope you guys have had a wonderful week so far. And yeah, we have had mostly Korean green teas over this past month. It's been a lot of study, but yeah, I haven't actually dug into these balhyocha that much because they're even more intimidating to me than green teas from Korea are. At least green tea, I know what it is, I know what to expect, I know how to brew it, I kind of have an idea of how it's going to react. But balhyocha is this other category of tea that, if we really had to put it into a definition, it's going to be somewhere like an oolong, somewhere like a yellow, somehow like a black tea, somewhere in the middle of all of those. And the reason why we just can't call it a black tea, I know they look like black teas if you look at them. Like this one even looks like like an unsmoked lapsang souchong, and this one looks like a, maybe like a keema. And so they have a kind of black tea appearance. They have the, golden tips sometimes that reminds me of like a high quality Assam. But what makes them different from a black tea is that they also have a kind of humidity process. It's kind of similar to yellow tea. And also every single producer of balhyocha, even more than any other region, will have their own specific way of processing that balhyocha. So, I've talked to Arthur Park and Eric about it, and they're like, oh, sometimes the producers don't even want to tell us what it is because they've had it passed down to them. It's very specific, and they want it to be their own specific processing style that no one really does as well. So we're going to expect quite a lot of variation in between these teas as kind of like all black tea as they look. There's quite a lot of, differences in the shapes, actually. This one's like a little bit more rolled up, almost like a balhyocha, or like a keeman. This one looks a little bit more like whole leaves. This one looks a little bit more broken up. So lots of different things going on with the same balhyocha category. So as someone who's doing this as New Horizons, I, again, don't know much about these. So I kind of like that we're going into this not really knowing much about it. If anyone is really into balhyocha, again, New Horizons is pretty relative. Maybe you are really familiar with balhyocha, in which case you should be doing something else. But, maybe you can help guide us in this journey. We can learn from each other. But I'm going into it being like, I don't know what to expect from these teas. I don't know what flavor notes, what textures, what experiences will come out. And that's why we want to do that kind of like going outside of what we're used to. Is it's going to challenge our palates again. It's going to make us feel that, wow, I don't know what to expect from this. I don't know what, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to experience, and that's like I don't know. I've been doing tea for a long time, and to be able to recapture that, I think is a really, really cool and magical thing. Just reminds you that you always have something to learn, even if you have experience in that category. Yeah. Having that ability to remember again what it feels like to not know, I think is really, really cool. Also helps relate more with people who we want to help, who are newer to tea. I think, we can get excited and be like, oh my god, did you see that Preaching Ming, Dracula came from Verdant Tea from, Mrs. He? And they're like, what? I don't even know what you said there. What happened? And now that we're here with the balhyocha and, I'm getting this packet from Morning Crane, and I'm like, Jangun Cha JD balhyocha from Morning Crane Tea. I'm like, I don't know what that is. Is Jangun Cha the vendor? Is Jangun Cha the maker? What does JD mean? JD, I don't know, I think Jaedong, Jaedong from StarCraft is what I'm thinking about. I don't know what that means, and that's what a lot of people experience for the very first time when they get their Yunnan sourcing orders, and they're like, 2008 Manghai Dai V93, etc. They're like, what the hell is going on? But as tea people, I think we've gotten used to getting these packages, so that, you know, I'm like, oh, Manghai, of course, it's a tea factory, and Dai is, you know, the model, and but this is the same feeling that a beginner would get. So I think it's good for us to recapture what that feeling is, so that we can become better kind of stewards when we introduce tea to people, making ourselves feel new again in that process, at least for me. That's what I get from this. Okay, so we've got the setup going on. I don't know balhyocha very well, so on the screen you can see it very well. Let me situate these guys so you see. I've got 5 different balhyocha that we're going to go through today. And it's going to be in order of, I don't know what order it is. I don't know how to even categorize these guys. So this is for those of you who have the Korean group by order, we're doing the Jangun JD balhyocha here, the Sowa Dawan balhyocha here, Dosim Dawan's So Ipcha here. I don't even know what I'm saying. Dosim Dawan's De Ipcha here, and then the Halmoni Cha from Jeon Jae-yeon here. So I think the first thing I said was the producer. So Jangun Cha is the producer here. Soa Dawan. These are the same producer, Dosim Dawan. I'm looking at the labels on the side. And then Jeon Jae-yeon is the tea maker of the Halmoni Cha, grandmother tea. It's the most famous balhyocha from morning green tea, made by this lady who was taught by her grandma, who's now a grandma. So I'm like, whoa, anyone that's giving me a tea that's from someone's grandma who was taught by their grandma is probably really good. But besides that, I don't really know much about these. So let's get started. So, balhyocha JD, balhyocha SD, So Ipcha, De Ipcha, Halmoni Cha is the name that you'll find on your label if you're following along with your own group by order. Yeah. And then Marcel says, had a Korean jungjak a long time ago. Yeah, I didn't even know what jungjak was supposed to be. We dove into that last week. I don't know what the nomenclature is. So, but we liked it. So now we're able to connect that name to a dot in our heads. So, for those of you who've joined us before, you know that our bowl brewing method is a favorite way for us to evaluate tea. Simple, there's not a lot of moving parts, not as many dishes also afterwards, you know, like I could get like all my little whatever. I am not a cupping set kind of person. I really hate cupping sets. There's nothing I have against cupping sets, but something about a cupping set makes me just drop it. So we really, really like bowls, and these are the kinds of, you know, bowls you'd see set up at a tea maker's table when they're about to test their tea, either in the middle of the tea making process or after they finish making the tea. They'll have a bowl with a spoon like this, little soup spoon, and then they'll literally just put the leaves in the bowl and pour hot water over it, as hot as possible, and then taste. So this is not something we made up. This is something that I've, you know, kind of seen from the time we spent mostly in Taiwan, but everywhere else too will do this. And it helps you kind of get a sense for the tea very easily. You can interact with the tea. I like that the tea is out and visible as it's steeping, so you can see how it's developing. I feel like inside a teapot or a cupping set, it kind of gets trapped inside, and I don't see what's happening. So there's pros and cons to using a cupping set or a bowl brewing setup like this, but I prefer this because I don't like dishes, and I don't like using cupping sets because I don't know how to pour them. I've even been taught by the guy who does the cupping competitions in Taiwan, like the guy who does the competitions in Taiwan, who judges them and does all the cupping sets. He's taught me. I still don't know how to do it, so I think I just have a connection to these bowls. Okay, let's get started. So, near boiling water, we will pour it up to just a certain point. I forgot to get my scale, Steven. So, I will just do counts on this. And by counts, I mean, if you don't have a scale, you can try to count how many seconds passes in between the pour and when you stop pouring. I already lost count, so now I'm just going to have to resort to seeing if they're the same level or not. But in theory, you can use a scale, you can use just a count. You go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then do it again in the next bowl. So there's a lot of different ways to work around trying to at least get some consistency. The best way is a scale. but I forgot to get the scale. So that's pretty much why I'm not using a scale today. Probably use a scale. But if not, you can still use, a more intuitive method as well. Let us know what you guys are, brewing this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you might be. Seeing Nazanin from Tea Thoughts and Griot1 and Nicholas from Tea Traveler. Welcome to Tea Practice today. Right now we are brewing some balhyocha from Morning Crane Tea. A study in a tea that we don't know very well. And that I have no idea what to expect from this little tasting we're doing today. For those of you who've had the Korean group buy so far, which teas have you liked so far from that group buy? We have had a lot of fun with the Korean green teas. We've had so much fun with them. Yeah, but I admit I put the balhyocha at the end because I felt like they were the most challenging for us to get into. Because I have no idea what to expect from these black oolong yellow oddball teas. Yeah. And for those people who are like, oh, yellow tea should be its own category, or purple tea should be its own category, or even like Darjeeling should be its own category, you might relate a lot to these guys. Balhyocha really doesn't fit into a specific category. I think if we really had to put it into a box, it would probably live in the oolong box, along with everything else that's not a black tea or a green tea. But it's kind of its own thing, for sure. You'll notice that the leaves are a little bit more kind of like greenish than a typical black tea would be. But also a little bit more like black tea than a typical oolong would be. So very, very strange new friends that we have here. Okie dokie. So we've got these guys steeping. Let's take a look at the color for now. They look like they're the same color. All of them. That's really unusual. Right, Steven? Do they look the same color? Yeah, they've got this kind of like orange. Pretty much. Orange appearance. Wow, they are really making it very challenging for me to differentiate. This is a little bit lighter. Yeah.
So one is noticeably lighter. The rest are pretty much.
This is a little bit darker here. This is the JD balhyocha. Yeah, wow. And these are again all different producers, so they're all taking their own kind of approach to this specific type of tea that's famous in Korea. Again, this is balhyocha, and balhyo means oxidized. Cha means tea, so oxidized tea. But there's no kind of like meaning that they have every single year. They're like, hey dude, like you sure you're making your balhyocha the same way as we are? Because you want to make it standardized? I think just from what I'm seeing in Korea, it's even less standardized than it is in China or Japan. People have their own approach to doing this kind of tea processing. So what's going to be cool here is not only will you taste the differences in the teas as grades, like we did last week, we did the grades of green tea from one producer. This is cool because while it's not from the same producer, you're going to get to taste the different personalities of the people who are making these teas. That's a little bit different than doing like this is a harvest 1, harvest 2, harvest 3. These are all different, just human experiences. I feel like we're being able to approach in these cups. So let's start. Let's taste. Sing hi to our friends Joe and Ronan and Eric. Welcome to Tea Practice today. We're just starting tasting the balhyocha. And yes, Eric, I did clarify earlier that these two at least were the same producer, Dosin Dawan, these two, but everything else is a different producer. So our friend Eric from Tea Sleuth is here, who is the person who helped create the Korean group buy availability for us this year. So thank you, Eric. And if you have any comments, we will really welcome it because you are really the only person in the world who knows anything about these. Okay, so first one. When I taste these, every single time I'm like, what are you? I don't even know what to do with you. What is going on? So, yeah, it's I don't even know. So this is the Jangun balhyocha. Jangun balhyocha is the first one we put in this lineup. We are not arranging this in any level of quality or anything. I just pick them and then I put Halmonicha last because I've experienced this tea before and it's a pretty interesting tea. So I just wanted to go. It's basically random order. I put the two Dosim Dawan teas together, but besides that, we have one producer, two producers, the same producer here, and then a fourth producer. So 4 different producers here. This is a Jangun balhyocha we're tasting. If those of you who have tried this before have had any input on it, let us know. I don't even know how to describe this tea. It tastes like, initially it tastes like a black tea, but not. It kind of tastes like hot cocoa to me. It's got like a hot cocoa thing going on. I like that a lot. It's very, very, very sweet. It's like, yeah, wow. It's really, 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 really sweet. Oh my goodness, this tea has changed so much every single time I have it. It's so confusing. Very, very sweet. A little bit of sourness, but in a nice way, like a good dark chocolate might be. But sweeter than like the ultra bitter dark chocolates you get. Yeah. We're gonna need some more water. Steven, can you get some extra water for us in case we need to re-steep these? So that's the first one. And you can get the sense that this is a black tea, but also not. There's something a little bit different going on in the process. It's a little bit more aromatic, a little bit more kind of. It's got more body to it too. Yeah, this stuff is really, really interesting and confusing to us. Next one is going to be the Soa Dawan balhyocha. So again, these are all balhyocha from mostly different producers. And I don't know anything about this one either. Wow, that's completely different. What is going on? So this one is the lightest colored one, and it definitely has that really, really bright, really, really kind of intense freshness to it. Almost like a not as withered oolong tea. For how dark the color is, there's a lot of greenness to it. Yeah, wow. It really tastes almost like a lightly oxidized oolong if you try it. It's really insane. That's a new one for me. I've never had a tea like that. At the same time fresh, and at the same time dark and sweet and bassy at the same time. I don't know what's going on. And yeah, again, we're putting ourselves in these situations where we don't even know how to approach a tea. If we were given a high mountain oolong here, I feel like I'd be able to put it in context more. I mean, like, oh, it's creamy and expansive, and it's got nice texture, and it feels like a winter harvest or a spring harvest. I have no comment here. It just feels like its own thing. And I think why I'm having such a hard time with this is maybe some of you guys can relate to it. If you're in the mode that you've studied tea for so long, it's so easy for us to try to assign labels or assign a description to something. It's been so long since we've been able to just experience a tea without any outside input. Because if you have a high mountain oolong, you will go into that high mountain oolong looking for something that you've seen before in the 10, 20, 100 different high mountain oolongs you've had before. Here, I've only maybe had enough balhyocha in my 10 years of drinking tea to count on one hand, I would say, if not, maybe on two hands at the most, but definitely closer to one hand. So I don't even know how to put this into context. So I think that's why I'm having difficulty here. I just have to be faced with the tea, basically. But I like it. I like this one. It's got a lot of length. It's got a lot of aroma. And then for those of you who have the group buy, I welcome you to do this by yourselves at home. You might get a different experience from this. I found that whenever we've done the balhyocha, we have had so many different notes come out just every single time. I feel like these are teas that change a lot based on how you brew them. So play around with them, and of course make your own opinions, make your own judgment calls on these. Okay, next one, the soicha. Wow, oh my goodness, that feels like, oh, wow. Okay, so this one's really, really zesty. That one woke me up a little bit. That feels like you made a really, really fancy Lipton black tea happen with like bergamot orange and citrus zest and yeah, very, very just poppy and happy and sunny and wants to go to the beach and doesn't want to, like, this is your friend who's like, oh my god, it's winter again. Can I please be in a beach in like Costa Rica or something? Here, try it, Steven. Meet my friend who wants to go to the beach. So this one's more like springtimey. This is more like summer at the beach, right? It's partying hard right now. This is a party hard kind of tea. I don't know. Is it just me? Very, very peppy. Very, very, very bright. Yeah, wow. Very Wow. I'm not sure if you guys saw our story earlier this week, but there are some teas that, you know, are like, they have their own personalities, almost like humans. And this is one that I'm like, yeah, this is your friend who's like, yo, let's go to the beach. You know, I got my stuff. We got a cooler. They're really peppy. I don't know how they're so peppy on like a Saturday morning at like 6 o'clock. That's them. They're already having a pina colada or something. that I'm getting that sense from this tea, the soicha. And again, if you get a different experience from your teas when you taste them, no worries. This is my first time kind of like getting to know them too. Maybe this person who's like likes to go to the beach at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, is actually a professor of, you know, I don't know, astrophysics also. So I don't know what I need to get to know this tea more for sure. That's my initial reaction. Very citrusy. And we're seeing so much of a difference even between just these first three balhyocha in terms of taste and feeling. This definitely pepped me up quite a bit. The soicha from Dosin Dawan. And correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but I thought I saw on the Morning Crane website that the soicha is supposed to be a smaller leaf than the daeupcha. I think that's what that is, the difference between these two. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but these two here, the third and the fourth, are the same producer. So we actually do have a comparison here between some leaf material within this lineup. Of course, the leaf material would change the way the tea will taste in the cup. So let's see what it tastes like when you have a different leaf material but the same producer within this category. So fourth one is the daeupcha from Dosin Dawan. Let's give it a try. Wow! Oh my goodness! I can't believe this is from the same producer. That's nuts. That's crazy. That's not what I expected. This is very bassy and very earthy. This is not the same friend who wants to go to the beach at 7 in the morning, by the way. This is a friend who, I don't know, this might be you, Steven. Wow, like so bassy and so earthy and so, they want to go on a hike and you want to bring your phone. No, leave your phone at home. Try some of this tea, Steven. It's from the same producer too. It's crazy. I can't believe it. Very different experiences. Eric says, reach out with your feelings as we taste things. We're trying to, Eric. If you don't know what tasting notes to use, if you don't know how to describe these teas, just have an experience with them. Have a conversation with the tea. We like to talk to tea too. I'm going to call out Showa and Noah as the other crazy people who like to talk to tea, just in case you might think, you know, what's wrong with Rhea and Steven? Are they talking to tea leaves? Yes, we do, number one. Number two, we're not the only ones who do it. If it helps you as a device, like, I think as humans, we're just wired better to connect with things if we can anthropomorphize them. So even on like a left brain level, if you can think of your tea as a person, your brain will be able to make connections better about what is going on with that tea. And if you have to recall that tea later on, just think about it. Like, it's so much easier for us as humans to remember a person than it is to remember an object. So if I ask you, who is your kindergarten teacher? Because it's a person, you might be able to remember that, you know, like Miss January was my first grade teacher. I didn't go to kindergarten, but my first grade teacher was Miss January. But if you're like, hey, what was the color of the alarm clock in your bedroom when you were 7, 8? Or like, what was the color of your, you know, pencil? It's so much more difficult to remember what objects are. So if you try to approach teas as people, not even like a spiritual level or woo level, which you can if you want to, we do a little bit of both. It does make it easier for you to understand teas because you're using that kind of wiring that we have. That makes it easier for us to study and understand people. Just a human thing, you know. We kind of evolved to be that way. But also on like a, you know, tea energy level too, I think that the teas can also speak to you in a way that can also sound like people. Just like this one wants to go to the beach, and this one, Steven, what was your opinion on
I agree with what you said. It's very different.
The daeupcha, it's more like grounded and earthy, and I mean, like, this guy probably could, or girl, I don't know, it could, you know, yeah, they have a lot of things to say. It's gonna probably take a lot of time. I like this tea quite a lot. I tend to like the teas that are a little bit more kind of grounding and earthy, because I tend to be a little bit, anxious, and we've talked about this before. I gravitate to teas that can kind of help me anchor a little bit, because I tend to have a lot of energy and a lot of kind of antsiness. So I'm naturally drawn to these. Wow. Yeah, wow. So slow and mature and steady, whereas this one is more like it's from the same producer. What is going on there? That's crazy. Very interesting, and both again within the same balhyocha category we're talking about. So yeah, we're gonna go into the last tea now. I'm a little nervous to try this one because our first experience with this tea, with this person, was very like, whoa. Felt like the person was like, hey, you are not ready to have this conversation yet. So we haven't dipped into it since we first tried it. But this is balhyocha. This is the balhyocha out of all the group that is the most popular and most well known, I think, from Morning Crane. This is made by Miss Jeon Jae-yeon, who is the halmoni in balhyocha. She's the grandma who makes this tea, and she was taught by her grandma, from what I remember from the story. So let's try this in a little bit. Let's say hi to our friends first, though. Infused with tea and Tree House Tea House. I love that name. Steve Hobbs and the Rabbit of Tea, and Kayovna, is that right? Vipodzemi. Jakey Bautista, Esther, and Tyler, welcome to Tea Practice today. We've gone through 4 different balhyocha so far. Very different personalities within the same category. This is why you can't just say that balhyocha is just this crazy thing that Korea has on the side, and it's just it's so tempting to make a decision on a tea that's unusual just from one instance. But Steven, if I gave you any of these teas and I'm like, this is balhyocha, would it be a good representation of any of the others?
The name? No.
I mean, they're just so different. They're just so different. So I really invite you to, if you're exploring these unusual teas from an area you're not used to, give it a little bit more time than just 1 or 2 samples. And even if you get samples, like a 10-gram sample might not even be enough for you to get a read on it, because there's so much that it can do, so many ways it can change. I grew up in the tea generation where we were just sample people. I grew up in the Steepster era and like the tea forum era. Like before tea forum was a thing, it was just Adagio's tea forum. And we were sample bugs, like as many samples as possible, trade samples with other people, but only like 3 grams. I don't need 5 grams, I just need 3 grams. And so we were making decisions a lot, I think, in that era that we grew up in, to just sample as much as possible and make a decision based on just what we tasted. Because we'd make reviews about a tea just based on one tasting. I did this for a long time on Steepster. Not knowing that, I was saying things like, oh, High Mountain Oolong, I've had 10 of them, I know it, or something like that. Which is so natural of a thing to happen, I think. But then as time goes on, you're like, oh my god, I didn't know that this could be the case. I didn't know that there could be so much range within the same tea. All that to say, yeah, take your time with your balhyocha samples, get to know them. Let's do this halmonicha, this last tea. So this is from Jeon Jae-yeon. It is a balhyocha, so while it's called halmonicha, it's got a name, grandmother tea, it is still a balhyocha in terms of the processing style. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so oh my goodness, this tea, there is something going on with this tea that is like, wow. So yeah, this is gonna force me to talk about this topic. There are just some teas that are not teas anymore, and they just they want to have a conversation with you. And I think it takes some time to be able to hear that ask of the tea. It took me a very, very, very long time. But there are just some teas that more than others will ask you to be like, I know you're trying to taste me because I'm a tea, but I need you to sit down and have a conversation with me. And I think this tea, the halmonicha, is one of those teas. Some hints to find these teas. They're teas that might not be as immediately impressive at first. You might read other people talking about it and being like, wow, there's so much this tea could give, and then you taste it, you're like, it's actually pretty subtle. I don't get what I don't really understand. It's kind of boring. I don't, because they don't actually have a lot of flavor to them. But if you listen a little bit closer, you might be surprised by what the tea has to say in terms of what it might give you. And I say this as someone who I didn't know that these teas existed for such a long time, only to look back and I'm like, oh my god, I remember that one dance song I got that had no taste. But oh my god, was it trying to tell me something? I didn't know it was trying to tell me something. Yeah, so those kinds of teas, if you come across a tea that, especially like if someone you trust a lot gives it to you, and they're like, hey, this is really special, try it out, just see what you feel, and then it comes out a little bit disappointing in terms of flavor, but the person who gave it to you has really good taste in tea, and you usually like their taste in tea, probably try to see if there's something else they might be talking about that's not a flavor level kind of thing. And it took me a very long time to get to that point, and I was surprised when it happened. So I want to make it a little bit shorter for you guys. But any tea that's like that, I'm going to red flag it for you and be like, there's something going on with that tea that might not want to be a review or a tasting note. And the Hamonicha is one of those teas, I would say. Steven and I first brewed this tea in the morning. Just be like, oh yeah, Eric really loves Hamonicha, let's have some before work. And we had it, we're like, oh my god, wait, hold on. This tea doesn't want us to just have a quick tasting session with it. It wants us to dive deep into it and get to know it better. And we literally could not finish the session because it was just so intense and so it wanted to have that, that session. And that might sound kind of strange or whatever, but just think about it maybe in the sense of like having takeout sushi versus like an omakase session at like a really, really good sushi restaurant. Like they're both sushi. It's both Japanese cuisine, right? Same kind of approach as well. Same ingredients, fish and vinegared rice and seaweed. And there's nothing wrong with having a takeout sushi from Smith's or Vaughn's or Albertsons, like they can be tasty. The person who makes it is also a trained sushi maker and makes better sushi than I ever could, right? It's still a good lunch. It's still a good piece of food. Like it's not like they didn't make it with love or it's not good for you or whatever. But there are situations where you can take those same ingredients and someone in a different context, in a different environment, wants to create a different experience for you, and that's the omakase that you get from, like I don't even like Jiro Dreams of Sushi. If you've seen that documentary, that's like omakase style sushi, right? What Jiro's trying to do and what your friend at Vaughn's at the sushi counter is trying to do are different things, and they're not better or worse than each other. But I find that it's a little bit more approachable to kind of like understand what's going on with the sushi counter at Vaughn's than what this guy with like the fish and like the rice is trying to do to you. It's not a perfect example of how this is going, but again, I just invite you to think about the idea that tea might want to talk to you in different ways. Tea might want to be a different experience to you, even if it's the same like leaves. There are just some teas that want to sit down with you and demand a little bit more attention than others. And this is one of those teas. I've just gone on and on about the Hamonicha. I don't even want to talk about the flavor because, yeah, like I would say out of every one of these teas, this is probably the lightest. Steven, try it out. That Hamonicha at the very end is very subtle. Like this one is like chocolatey. This one's zesty and citrusy. Oh, this one. This one's more fresh and springtimey. This one's more like grounded and earthy, actually going towards a more subtle side. The Hamonicha is balanced. It's very difficult to pick out flavor notes from it. Steven, would you agree with that?
Much more subtle.
It's very, very subtle. And it is the one that I've steeped the longest time, right? This is why I'm so used to doing this with so much time difference between each tasting. Because I know the really, really, really good teas, they kind of keep their character no matter how long or short that you steep them. Yeah, very subtle. Hard to pin down a tasting note, I would say. The other ones, I could pin down tasting notes easy, no problem. This one, though, it's just its own thing.
The flavor is not what's supposed to be exciting about this tea.
Yeah, I mean, it's a delicious flavor, right? But it's I can't put a tasting note to it. Malty, I guess. It's the most quote unquote boring out of all of them.
Yeah. Flavor-wise.
Flavor-wise, right. But so if you try to put if I had to write a review tasting note-wise about any of these, this one would be the most challenging because there's not much going on. And yet it's a tea that when I drink it I'm like, okay, hold, give me a second. There needs to be a conversation done with this tea. So yeah, I didn't even want to talk about that today, but this is why I put this tea at the very end, because we had that situation happen with us before, the first time we had it. So yeah, I just welcome you to try that. If it sounds crazy to you, that's fine. If it doesn't work for you, that's okay too. But I think there's enough said about tasting notes. I don't mind putting in a little bit extra about sort of the crazy side of the tea world that makes us all sound like crystal clutching people. So for those of you anyway who had these teas before, what experiences have you guys had? Have you liked any of them? Have you disliked any of them? Even for these teas that want to have conversations, sometimes we don't get along with them. It's like people, you know? You can't get along with everyone, and just because your best friend likes this person doesn't mean you will like it either. So, you know, experience them the way that you would like them to. And then also when you're getting to know these teas, I also want you to, you know, re-steep them, hold them. We talked about this last week in the green tea tasting. You hold the leaves, see what they feel like. Are they soft? Are they hard? Are they easy to break? Are they not? So you can just try to start building a database in your head about what balhyocha is. We talk about this a lot. It's the flavor library, right? The flavor library is the sum of all your experiences you've ever had, every single session of tea, every tasting, every cup, every steep of every tea you've ever had is a library in your head that you can go back to in the future if you want to explain something to someone, or if you want to try a new tea, or if you want to study another tea and compare it to something else. Why this is hard for us is if you go into my library of flavors, if you open the door, there's probably 2 wings dedicated to High Mountain Oolong. There's 2 whole wings, and the director of that wing is asking for another wing because there's no space to put all the space we need for all our High Mountain Oolong sessions. And then the balhyocha section is just a sign that says coming soon. That's what's happening in my flavor library right now. I don't know how to talk about these because I don't have that much reference, you know? And this is why this proves this is not a black tea. I can't even go to my black tea section and make a connection as well. It's very difficult. But if you give me like a Jinjin or a, you know, Ruby 18 from Taiwan, or, you know, an Assam Orthodox Golden Tips, I can go into my library and be like, yeah, this is where I put you. I can't put these balhyocha in the black tea library. I just can't do it. They deserve their own category. But that's great then, because then you can open your new wing of your library. You'll have more teas to put in there, and yeah, it's I think it's just really cool to have as big of a library as possible. And I guess to just deepen the example, every tea is a book, right? Every tea is a book. You can remember it when you pull out your memory, open it up, but you can add to the book every single time you have that same tea again, until eventually you have this big archive of experiences you can go back to in the future. So when someone's like, I don't like balhyocha, and I'm like, why? You know, like, you tried it once, basically. I find that people who are quick to do that are like, you know, I tried it once and that's pretty much it. Which is fair, you know. I thought that I didn't like dancehall for a really long time. But I made the decision when my library was maybe only 10 books large. And I studied the same tea over and over again. I studied it over and over again. I'm like, I just don't like this. I just don't like this. I don't like it. And then I just closed my library, that wing, for years. And then it took having people... I'm taking this a long way with the metaphor. It took someone having to drag me to someone else's library, be like, yo, dancehall's really cool. I promise. Check this out. I'm like, no, I don't like dancehall. Yeah, yeah. I want you to be able to be more open and more explorative and more just faster than I was. I took so long to learn all of this. I want you to do it faster than I did at your own time, but I still think you can do it better than I can. So expand that library, you know? Any questions about these teas? Let us know. if you had the balhyocha sampler sent to you, you should have these inserts given to you, which will tell you a little bit more about balhyocha and what to expect from them. So a couple things that are written here by Eric at the group by. For example, Bubon balhyocha is partially oxidized balhyocha. You have Ban balhyocha, which is semi-oxidized. Wanjon balhyocha, which is very oxidized. And Hu balhyocha, after oxidized, much like a heicha. I mean, they have this whole range of different levels of oxidation. And then yes, I've seen that they've also simplified it into Huangcha and Hongcha, which is a little bit more. Huang is yellow and Hong is red, so a little bit on the lighter side, a little bit on the darker side. So, I feel like these are important, but also even less important to try to categorize things than it is to just experience and later on use these categories to label them if you want to. So yeah, quite an experience we've had today. Thank you again to the Korean group by Eric Glass and Arthur Park. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible just passion of Korean tea with us, making us open the wing of our flavor library to Korean teas, which would have never, existed without your help. We should name that wing of our library, the Eric Glass, the glass wing of Korean tea experiences or something like that. Korean tea has its own place in the world. Not Chinese, not Japanese. Very important to remember that, especially in the historical context of what China and Japan have with Korea. It's really not good to call it in between Chinese and Japanese tea. That's a different discussion, though. I trust you guys will do the research if you'd like to. But thank you again for joining us for today's tea practice. Appreciating you again. From Las Vegas, Esther, I see you. I'm glad that you enjoyed our point of view and would like to explore it. And yes, we will be putting the replay on IGTV and on YouTube very, very soon. Besides that, that's the end of November's tea practices. I hope you guys have had a wonderful month. Thank you for joining us as always. We're going to sign off for now. Rhea and Steven from Las Vegas. Have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.